ideas are sovereignty and interoperability, right? These are the core values that drive Cosmos, from which it all sprang. It's a philosophy, fundamentally, a philosophy of blockchain design before anything else, before a technology. It's sort of philosophy and values first. And the idea is that we want the world's communities to be sovereign over their own infrastructure and applications, to not have to pay rents or give up their autonomy to any other larger power structure, to be able to define their own politics and their own economics in a way that makes sense for them. That's what sovereignty means. But we want them to be able to do that in a way that's also interoperable with all the other sovereign communities out there, right? So sovereignty, but with interoperability. And so you can have many different sovereign zones, each with their own rule set, their own politics, their own economics, that can serve specifically their communities and their values, and yet still be interoperable with all of the other communities of differing values, right? And it's a way to show, humility and respect for the differences of human beings all across the world, and not to assume that we could build, a singular system that could serve all of them, but rather to build tools that empower people, that empower communities to build the systems that work for them, to express their own values, but to still be able to communicate and interoperate with the many other, communities out there. And that's the core of Cosmos, are those values of sovereignty and interoperability. And that's been at the heart of everything we've been building for the last, 7, 8 years, something like this, right? So that's the philosophy, but of course there's also a technology, right? And the philosophy, when we started out, was seen as somewhat blasphemous, right? It was like, oh no, there's gotta just be one blockchain to rule them all. You have to just focus on putting as much security as you can into one chain, and maybe that chain will be Bitcoin, or maybe it'll be Ethereum. And the Cosmos idea that we could develop many chains, and they would each be application specific, community specific, was seen as heretical, as if that couldn't possibly work. There was no way an interoperability protocol like IBC could be secure or could work. And what we've seen instead is over the years, more and more, those ideas have come to be very widely adopted across the whole blockchain community, to the point that you have blockchains like Solana, where Anatoly, the founder of Solana, will say, oh yeah, Solana is a Cosmos blockchain. Not because it uses any of the Cosmos technology, but because it respects those ideals of building blockchains that serve a particular community, a particular application, a particular use case, even if it's general purpose, right? And so it's been pretty amazing to see the whole blockchain ecosystem industry start to adopt and come around to the Cosmos values and to take them up themselves, and even to see, Ethereum scaling in a way that sort of harbors these ideas from Cosmos, right? So that's the philosophy which has been spreading, but in order to sort of manifest that philosophy, we had to build technology, of course, right? And so from the beginning, Cosmos has been focused on building very general purpose, useful, open source, of course, technology. We have quite a modular stack. Everyone's now talking about the sort of modular thesis in blockchains. You could say that Cosmos was certainly a pioneer of a sort of modular approach to building blockchains by looking at the blockchain application stack and decomposing it into the different pieces that would provide as much power and flexibility to developers, right? And so the different, if you're not familiar, the different pieces of the Cosmos stack, they go something like this. At the bottom, we have Tendermint. More recently, we have forked Tendermint, and it's now called Comet BFT. Again, Byzantine fault tolerance. That is the underlying consensus engine that makes distributed consensus possible in Cosmos blockchains, right? Above that, we have the Cosmos SDK, which is a general framework for building applications in Golang. And then we have IBC, the interoperability protocol, the inter-blockchain communication protocol, which allows many different blockchains to communicate, right? And these three pieces, this is sort of where Cosmos started. Of course, there's many more pieces now. Of course, we have Cosm we have many different kinds of virtual machines being built. We have the Agoric virtual machine in the house. We've got the EVM built into Cosmos, right? So the Cosmos stack was sort of general enough that people could experiment with a huge diversity of kinds of applications, and that was really the point, right? And so part of that goes back to how Tendermint was originally architected, and and now Comet, with the idea of separating the application, the logic of the user, from the underlying distributed systems, networking, consensus, peer-to-peer layer, right? And so Tendermint, or now Comet, takes care of all of that low-level stuff, the actual consensus, and exposes a very clean interface that we call ABCI, not to be confused with IBC, to the application, right? And that allows you to build applications in any programming language, right? And so, once upon a time, we had people building in Go and Rust and Python and Java and C++ and Haskell. And that was very motivating because people didn't want to be stuck with the Ethereum virtual machine or with Solidity, right? They wanted to use the general purpose languages that they grew up with, that they were used to, that had mature tool chains, right? Of course, we focused on Go, the programming language, and building a framework, the Cosmos SDK, built in Go that allows you to build applications in Go. But now we're seeing a thriving Rust community. Excuse me. People are building applications in Rust on top of Comet. We've got Anoma, Nomic, Penumbra, and more, really pushing the boundaries on what can be built in privacy, especially, and doing it in Cosmos. And so that flexibility that Cosmos provides has really been extremely inviting and appealing to developers who want to build on the sort of frontier of distributed systems design and push the infrastructure forward in new ways. And it allows them to experiment, in particular, with new virtual machine designs and with new cryptography, right? And that's allowing the whole blockchain industry to move forward in a way that isn't possible when you're constrained to a particular virtual machine environment like the Ethereum virtual machine or the Solana virtual machine or so on. You can't experiment with new virtual machine designs when you're constrained in that sort of way. And so Cosmos was always also sort of about enabling this kind of experimentation, providing secure infrastructure for people to build new kinds of virtual machines and to deploy new kinds of cryptography to really push the boundaries of what's possible, right? And then on top of that, we have IBC, the Interoperability Protocol, the Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol, which again was designed to be a general purpose communication protocol for communicating between arbitrary kinds of machines, right? And whether that's a Tendermint-based blockchain, whether it's some other blockchain, or whether it's just a computer, as I like to say, on the internet of blockchains, nobody knows you're a fridge. Because you can hook up any kind of machine over IBC to communicate with others, right? So we think of IBC as this really general purpose transport protocol, similar to TCP/IP on the internet today, right? And a lot of what we're trying to build is an internet of blockchains, right? We're all familiar with the sort of internet that we use for everything, which we had some technical trouble with today, hooking up to the to the live stream. But what we're trying to do is upgrade the infrastructure of the internet to be more secure, more decentralized, and to provide more ownership over that core infrastructure to the communities that depend on it, right? And I like to use this analogy between silicon-based computers and consensus-based computers, right? And so in the world of the silicon computers, we initially had this new technology, silicon transistors, right? And the first thing we started to do with it was build these massive mainframe computers that lived in, the basements of Dell or IBM or whatever, very big, bulky machines that took up whole rooms, right? And the idea back then was that this is how computing would work. Everyone would use some big mainframe computer and there would be time sharing and everyone would be able to use the sort of same machine and they'd split up the resources between them and no one would need their own. It wouldn't make any sense for everyone to have their own computer. That would be crazy. But of course, that's not how things progressed. We had the personal computing revolution where everyone suddenly had their own device, on their table, on their desk, and now in our pockets, right? And these personal computing devices are all hooked up over a general purpose interoperability protocol that we call the internet, right? And so we have an internet of personal computers. And so we see the same sort of thing happening in the blockchain space where you have these, we develop this new computing technology, right? The consensus computer using consensus algorithms, Byzantine fault tolerance, and so on. And the first thing we do with it is build these giant mainframe blockchains, right? The Bitcoins, the Ethereums of the world that aim to be the sort of world computing design, the one size fits all solution for the whole world, right? And our contention was, well, that's not sufficient. Human beings are too complex for that. They're too diverse for that. They want more autonomy and more control. We should take this consensus computing technology and enable it to be used and deployed by anyone, by any individual community, right? And that leads to this idea of the community computer, right? Similar to the personal computer, where any community can deploy their own shared computing infrastructure, a consensus computer, a blockchain, and we can hook them all up over shared interoperability protocols like IBC to give us an internet of blockchains, right? And that's really what this is all about and what we're building. And ultimately, the long term here, I see us on the cusp of constitutional reform, right? On the order of what happened in the 19th century with the Industrial Revolution, with the formation of nation states, new laws for limited liability corporations. The whole institutional structure of society that we're familiar with today kind of came around back then based on a set of technologies that change the whole world and how we organize. And I think something similar is happening now that will play out over the next few decades, perhaps, that will change the institutional structure of the world we live in. And this is being accelerated by digital technology, by the internet, by AI. And blockchains emerge as this sort of substrate that we can use to take control of our political economies, right? And to evolve them in a way that better represents the land, our bioregions, and the human beings that we all care so much about, right? And that's really what Cosmos is trying to do, is to enable us to upgrade our political economic infrastructure to better represent sort of human values and community values so that we can hopefully sustain our civilizations long into the future in a more sort of grounded and empathetic and naturally synergistic sort of way, rather than the kind of devastating, exploitative, extractive approach of modern civilization. So that's at least my hope. That's what I'm in it for, and that's what we hope to be building towards. But we can't enforce that on anyone because we built this technology to be general purpose and for anyone to use it however they want, and that's also part of the design. So it's on the people that use it, that's you and everyone out there, to use it for the right purposes and to try to use it for good and to build and to really build better systems. I don't know how long I have, but I feel like that's a pretty good note to end it on.
5 more minutes. We can have some questions.
Sure, I'm happy to take questions, yeah, and do some cartwheels if anyone wants. Yeah, what's up?
I can give.
We're gonna bring you a mic.
Can I see your hand? Okay.
Yeah, is there any possibility while using Cosmos SDK and the IBC protocols for another blockchain network or another custom blockchain network?
Yeah, I mean the whole point is to be able to build custom blockchain designs, and so there are some 50 plus Cosmos blockchains out there today, maybe more, and some of the most advanced use cases we're seeing for blockchain development are happening using the Cosmos stack, right? I'm not sure if that answers your question though.
Okay, thank you. And I would like to ask another question,
sure,
which is about mobile development. And Solana has actually decided to lead the charge while other blockchains were actually staying behind. For Cosmos, I would like to ask that if it's possible to do native development on iOS and Android, or cross-platform development like in Tori, which is another Rust stack for cross-platform, C++, Flutter, which is a Google framework for mobile development, and the React Native, which is created by Facebook.
I think the answer is yes. It is possible. It hasn't been as much of a focus, but we are seeing sort of growing mobile usage and development. But because of the sort of general purpose architecture of Cosmos, it's possible to really build on any platform and use different technologies. But that's definitely a place where things could be improved quite a bit, is better libraries for mobile development. But I think that's sort of in the works. Cool. Anything else?
We have time. Yeah.
Hello. I have a question about moving to Web3. Now we have many apps in Cosmos ecosystem, which is Web2 apps. They use Web2 APIs and storing code as usual Web2 app. What do you think about moving to Web3? Will be this is mainstream? Is the next couple of years or not?
Yeah, I think so. This is a major goal, is to make it as easy as possible for Web 2 developers to move into Web 3. It's not always that straightforward because there are a lot of pieces and the infrastructure works a little bit differently. But again, part of the motivation of the way blockchains are built in Cosmos was to be able to use existing development tools, normal programming languages and so on, and allow you to use those languages to build within Cosmos. But the reality is building your own app-specific chain still has quite a bit of overhead, right? There's a lot of work involved in that. And so that's where the virtual machines really simplify things, right? And so you have Cosm, which allows you to build applications in Rust, and Cosm.js, which is the JavaScript sort of framework for starting to integrate with. You also have the Agoric virtual machine, which is basically a secure version of JavaScript. Dean, yeah, what's up? Makes it easy to sort of start building JavaScript applications as smart contracts. So there are sort of many different ways to enter from Web 2, and it's kind of getting easier all the time, right? And one of the things I'm starting to explore is trying to push Web 2 applications as far as possible until you hit the point where you really need something from the Web 3 world, right? And I think that's, I'd like to see kind of more of that before people just jump all the way into Web 3, really try to push the Web 2 application until it's very clear that you need something from Web 3 to kind of complement it. And that, I think that's a sort of interesting direction to continue to explore, because a lot of people have just really dived into to the Web 3 world, building, sort of gambling applications and casinos and sort of all this kind of stuff, which has been great for experimentation and for moving the field forward. But it's time to start to get, a little more serious about real world, let's say retail applications that, people all over the world can use more easily. And the tooling and the libraries are starting to get a lot better for that. And so it's, a lot better than it was even just a couple of years ago. But we still have further to go, and there's a lot of sort of education to be done and tooling to continue to improve. Hope that helps.
I have the mic here.
Yeah.
Can we create a new blockchain coins with using the Cosmos tools?
Yeah.
Is it possible?
To create new blockchains and coins?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the whole point. So Cosmos makes it very easy to create your own blockchain with your own community, your own validator set, and to build it however you want, with whatever rules you want, whatever economics you want, whatever tokens you want. You can create your own tokens, you can use other people's tokens. It's sort of entirely up to you. And so today we have something like 50 different blockchains built using the Cosmos technology. Each of them has their own token. They all, trade against each other, and they're used for different things. And so, yeah, that's one of the things Cosmos is so useful for, is launching your own blockchain with its own currency and its own sort of values. Yep.
We have last question. We have 2 minutes more. So we have from EF, maybe.
Hi. So talking about they're really seeing the approach of Cosmos, approaching from things from smaller scale than as a network. How do you see the smaller applications in the real world where Cosmos make a difference compared to other chains? For example, like a network for community, which parts of the real world economy can Cosmos plug into where the larger scale Ethereum-like chains cannot?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, ultimately, I see cities starting to adopt this technology to run their own infrastructure, and I really see money as the killer app of blockchains and cryptocurrencies. But I don't think we've quite unlocked how to connect to the monetary system in a meaningful way. And so, what I'm very interested in are local currency applications, community currencies, mutual credit. Things like obligation clearing, which is something we're working on now, that allow communities to kind of collaborate on reducing their debts and on using alternative economic media to reduce their dependence on banks. And if they have to pay gas fees, if they're constrained, if they have to pay gas fees on Ethereum, or if they're constrained, to environments that they don't control, then they have to give up a kind of sovereignty that somewhat defeats the purpose of what we're trying to achieve, right? So there's still a challenge of making it cheap and easy for them to operate their own infrastructure, but that's kind of improving all the time. And so, I especially see it being useful for these more sort of local community currencies and governance applications, and I'm hoping to see a lot more of that over the next few years.
Where do you think is the bottleneck? Like, is it the social difficulties? Is it the technical? Where do you see it?
I think it's mostly social at this point. Yeah.
Last one question.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if an organization wants to launch their own private blockchain, and if that organization doesn't care about interoperability, like, is there a clear advantage over just launching a proof of authority chain from Ethereum in regards to Cosmos SDK or Cosmos blockchains?
Yeah, you can definitely do that with Cosmos chains, and it gives you all the tools to be able to do that. And more flexibility than the Ethereum software, right? So the Ethereum software was built in a somewhat monolithic sense and was designed to run the mainnet Ethereum network, right? The Cosmos software was designed for anyone to run their own blockchain, right? So within the software, it makes it very easy for you to launch your own chain, whether you want to keep it private or you want to make it public. Completely up to you. If you want to interoperate or not, completely up to you. And the Cosmos stack sort of provides this kind of maximum flexibility to be able to do that, and gives lots of power to the developers with very minimal sort of constraints to be able to design the system that works, exactly for your use case. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, it was a